So yeah, I have a lot of I have a pedigree of comics like Calvin and Hobbes and Garfield. I remember spending the whole day just copying Garfield and trying to draw him perfectly and getting all those like back and forth stripes that he has, like the scritchy little line work. And it was tricky, but I was like so devoted to it and so obsessed with it. And like, what else? Tintin was a big part of my life when I was a kid. And there was a lot of things culturally that I didn't understand in there, but it was like a tour of the world through comic books because Tintin goes everywhere. And there's a lot of vehicles and architecture that's based on real research that they did to create those books. So yeah, the storytelling, the panels, the pacing of everything, the humor, especially of like the Thompson twins, the detectives who are very bumbling. They made it into Beaky Barnes in the form of the inspector, who's this kind of inspector, policeman, health inspector guy, who is really very bumbling in the story. A lot of his pratfalls and stuff come from Tintin and other things like Marx Brothers movies and Buster Keaton and like old radio shows that I used to listen to when I was a teenager for some reason. I was really into Abbott and Costello, especially. So for things like my chicken books, Interrupting Chicken, it's basically a dialogue between the dad and the kid, Papa Chicken and the little red chicken. So that came a lot from listening to old radio programs, and where it's like this banter back and forth between the characters. So I'm showing a picture of it right now for the people who are not watching this and they're only listening to it. That's why I'm sounding kind of distracted.
It's an important reminder, esteemed audience. Anytime you want, you can hop on YouTube or hop on middlegradeninja.com and see us. And since we're talking about so much glorious artwork that's on display, this might be one of the best episodes to hop on and watch.
I'll show the original Interrupting Chicken book here. This one doesn't even have a medal on the cover, I noticed. It could have been from before it won. This could be first printing. Yeah, it is. This is like, I just had this in my cupboard for like the last 10, 13 years because I've given away all my other copies.
I'm curious, did you go through a superhero phase as well, or was it always cartoons and more fun type of things? Not that superheroes aren't fun, but they're a little bit very serious to adolescents and now grown adults.
Right. They're very serious. I was into Spider-Man when I was like very young, and I did draw on some Post-it notes. I have a picture of like Catwoman, Spider-Man, and Superman, all done as basically like stick figures, and Spider-Man's throwing a web. Because they appeared he appeared on this show, The Electric Company, that I used to watch when I was a kid on PBS. So like I wasn't allowed to watch commercial TV until I was at least 6 or 7, and I just started changing the channel. But when I was raised in a educational, wholesome environment, at least until I was like 5 or 6. So when my grandma was babysitting us, my sister and I would just, as soon as she went downstairs, we'd flip the channel over to some cartoon show. But anyway, there was a show called The Electric Company that was about, I think it was about grammar and English, and it was a great show. And they had this crossover with Spider-Man a few times where he appeared on the show as a live actor. So that really blew my mind because I didn't have any access to him otherwise. So he crept into my cartoons, and then kids on the playground, they would say, "I'm Superman." And I would say, "Me too," even though I didn't really know who that was. And I picked up the Batman song, "Na na 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 na," from other kids on the playground as well. But yeah, I didn't really have that much of an interest in superheroes. It was more like later on, maybe my stepbrother had some X-Men comics that I got into, but mostly funny animal comics. And I even got into Donald Duck like much more recently through my kids. The old Carl Barks Donald Duck comics are just so amazing. And that's been an influence as I start to do my own comics. So yeah, more like funny animals. And I did gravitate towards stuffed animals as my favorite toys also. So I've always had like an affinity for animals and made up stories about my stuffed animals, interviewed them on my radio show that I had when I was a kid. I was about 8 years old. I had
Video show like on a tape recorder or?
Yeah, I had a tape recorder, and I just didn't have many outlets for my feelings or, telling anyone what was going on in my life. So I would go to my room and just do these long radio shows where I'd interview my sister or my stuffed animals or her stuffed animals, and like have callers call in that were fake callers, and maybe even some commercials, which kind of echoes like the origins of maybe Beaky Barnes, because Beaky Barnes has fake ads in it as well that break up the story. There are some right at the end. I'm trying to find some in the book, but there's some in the beginning, and then it's broken up by like an ad for spaghetti dental floss or chicken pedicabs, things that come up in the story. And so that was a big influence too, like watching TV, being a latchkey kid and having my mom working all the time, just watching like daytime TV and seeing these stupid commercials all the time. It kind of rotted my brain in a good way. And just commercials in general are an amazing like haiku of emotion and meaning, and like something that has to hit you emotionally in about 20 seconds. So I think I made a study of those without really meaning to. And that does affect how I write a picture book too, like trying to make it immediately hit someone on an emotional level, making it an unforgettable image, and telling a story in a short amount of time with very few words, mostly images. That all ties into making picture books. So yeah, to be honest, I would have to put television as a big influence in a lot of ways.
I feel like that's the clip that children should save and show their parents who are maybe a little bit reticent about letting them watch television. Like, no, I could grow up to be Ezra Stein. This is this is going to work out.
Good for you. I can't even, yeah, maybe I can't even say that as an author, but I mean, I'm not saying it was good for me necessarily, just that that's in the mix. It's part of my influence for sure.
So